The first mistake Admiral Korth-Val made was underestimating the hairless apes. The second mistake? Well, that one cost him his entire fleet. Standing in the command center of the massive battlecruiser Devourer's Edge, Korth-Val's mandibles clicked with anticipation. His scale hide rippled with excitement as dozens of sensor readings flooded the tactical screens around him. After centuries of conquering species across 17 star systems, the Xerathi Empire had finally found what their war council called the perfect prey. Humans. Tell me again about these Earth creatures, Korth-Val rumbled to his intelligence officer, Commander HFY-SCI-FI. The Admiral's yellow eyes gleamed with predatory hunger as he studied the holographic data streams. HFY-SCI-Fi's tentacles writhed nervously. Sir, according to our scouts, they're a remarkably fragile species. No natural armor, no claws, no venom blunts. They require artificial tools for everything. Their bones break easily, their skin tears with minimal pressure, and they die if they hold their breath for more than a few minutes. But that is Korth-Val snitted. What about their technology? Primitive, Admiral. They still use chemical propulsion for space travel. Their weapons fire simple projectiles. Most amusing of all, they haven't even colonized their own solar system properly. Just a few tiny outposts on nearby planets. The bridge crew erupted in chittering laughter. Lieutenant Grix-4, whose species had razor-sharp bone protrusions covering his skull, shook his head in disbelief. Sir, my people conquered 3-star systems before we even invented faster-than-light travel. These humans sound like they're barely past the Stone Age. Korth-Val's confidence swelled. The Xerathi had spent the last 500 years systematically enslaving or exterminating every species they encountered. The Valani, with their crystal-based technology, crushed in 6 months. The Korth, with their biomechanical warfare, extinct within a year. The mighty Draxi Empire, with their planet-killing weapons, now mining asteroids for their Xerathi masters. And these humans? They looked like they'd surrender before the first shot was fired. What's their population? Korth-Val asked, already calculating how many slaves they could harvest. Approximately 8 billion on their home world, sir. Plus maybe a few million scattered across their pitiful colonies. 8 billion. The Admiral's eyes widened. That was more than enough to fuel the Xerathi war machine for decades. And their military? HFY-SCI-FI consulted his datapad. Laughably small, sir. They have maybe a few hundred ships total, and most of those are just cargo haulers with weapons bolted on. Their largest military vessel is barely the size of our patrol boats. Korth-Val could hardly contain his excitement. This was going to be easier than conquering the plant-based Chlorians, and those creatures hadn't even fought back. He turned to address his bridge crew, all representatives of the various species that now served the Xerathi Empire. Attention, warriors! Today, we add another species to our collection. The humans appear to be so weak that we might not even need to fire our main weapons. Perhaps a few warning shots will convince them to surrender immediately. The bridge erupted in anticipatory hisses and clicks. Navigation Officer Vorth Prime, whose species had been conquered only 50 years ago, looked up from his console. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from Earth. Already. Korth-Val Loget. They must have detected our fleet, probably calling to surrender before we even enter their system. Put on screen. The main display flickered to life, showing a human female with short brown hair and tired eyes. She wore some kind of uniform with symbols Korth-Val didn't recognize. When she spoke, her voice was calm and professional. Unknown vessels. This is Admiral Jessica Kane of the United Earth Defense Force. You are approaching restricted space. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. The entire bridge fell silent for a moment before erupting in uncontrollable laughter. Lieutenant Grix-4 was wheezing so hard his bone spikes were rattling. Did she just ask us to identify ourselves? As if we are the ones trespassing. Korth-Val wiped tears from his eyes. Oh, this is rich. She thinks she can make demands of us. He gestured to his communications officer. Open a channel. The human admiral's image sharpened as the connection established. Korth-Val stood to his full height, his 4-meter frame towering over the command console. His scarred hide and battle-worn armor were designed to intimidate, and they had never failed to strike fear into enemy hearts. The human barely blinked. "I am Admiral Korth-Val of the Xerathi Empire," he declared, his voice booming across the bridge. "We are here to claim your species and your worlds. Surrender now, and we will allow some of you to live as slaves. Resist, and we will exterminate every last one of your kind." Admiral Kane's expression didn't change. She simply nodded once and said, "I see. Thank you for clarifying your intentions." The transmission ended. Korth-Val stared at the blank screen in confusion. "That's it? No begging? No negotiation? No desperate pleas for mercy?" ZYX9 checked his instruments. "Sir, they have gone completely silent. No transmissions, no movement from their ships. Maybe they are paralyzed with fear," suggested Weapons Officer Black 7, his multiple eyes blinking in sequence. "Some species just freeze when confronted with superior predators. Or maybe they are too stupid to understand what just happened," added Grix 4. "Remember the Flubnox? They kept trying to offer us fruit baskets even after we destroyed their first 3 cities." Korth-Val nodded thoughtfully. "Very well. Take us into their system. If they won't surrender properly, we will have to educate them about Xerathi superiority." The massive fleet of 1,200 warships began its approach toward Earth. Each vessel was a testament to Xerathi engineering, bristling with plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and shield-piercing beam weapons. The smallest destroyer in their fleet could single-handedly annihilate most planetary defense forces as they crossed into the outer solar system. Sensor technician Yith-12's tentacles began vibrating rapidly. "Admiral, I'm detecting some unusual readings." "What kind of unusual?" Korth-Val asked, only half paying attention as he reviewed the invasion plans. "Well, sir, there appear to be significantly more human installations than our scouts reported. I'm reading mining operations throughout the asteroid belt, multiple orbital stations around several planets. And this is odd." "What?" "Sir, I'm detecting what appear to be defensive installations hidden among the asteroids. Very well camouflaged. If I didn't know better, I'd say they have been watching us since we entered the system." Korth-Val's attention sharpened. "Watching us? Impossible. Our stealth technology is centuries ahead of anything these primitives could develop." Before Yith-12 could respond, every screen on the bridge suddenly displayed the same image. Admiral Kane, sitting calmly at what appeared to be a military command center. Behind her, dozens of humans worked at control stations with an efficiency that made Korth-Val's confidence waver slightly. "Admiral Korth-Val," Kane began, her voice as steady as before. "Thank you for waiting while we prepared our response to your generous offer." "Prepared a response?" Korth-Val sputtered. "You have nothing to prepare. You are surrounded by the most powerful fleet in the galaxy." Kane's lips curved in what humans call a smile, though there was no warmth in it. "Admiral, I have been fighting wars since before your scouts first peeked into our system. I have studied your tactics, your technology, and your species' rather predictable behavior patterns. Would you like to know what I learned?" The Xerathi Admiral's mandibles clicked angrily. "Your pathetic research means nothing. We have conquered hundreds of species." "Yes, you have," Kane agreed. "And do you know what every single one of those species had in common?" The bridge crew looked at each other uncertainly. This wasn't how these conversations usually went. Most species either surrendered immediately or launched desperate, futile attacks. None of them sat around giving lectures. "They all fought you one at a time," Kane continued. "Each species encountered your empire, realized they were outgunned, and either gave up or threw everything they had at you in a panic. But here's the thing about humans, Admiral. We have been fighting each other for our entire existence. We know a thing or two about warfare." Korth-Val was beginning to feel distinctly uncomfortable. "Get to the point, human." "The point," Kane said, her smile widening, "is that while your scouts were busy counting our ships and measuring our weapons, they missed something rather important." "And what's that?" "We have been talking to your former victims." The words hit the bridge like a physical blow. Sensor Officer Yith-12's tentacles went rigid. Communications Officer Plax 5 dropped his stylus. Even seasoned warriors like Lieutenant Grixfor looked suddenly pale. Kane wasn't finished. Turns out, Admiral, that enslaved species remember their home worlds. They remember their families. And they remember who destroyed their civilizations. They also remember every technical specification of every Xerathi ship they have been forced to maintain for the past few centuries. Korth-Val's confident demeanor was cracking. Impossible. Our conquered species are loyal. They serve the Empire willingly. Do they? Kane asked. Tell me, Admiral, how many of your bridge crew are actually Xerathi? The Admiral looked around his command center as if seeing it for the first time. Navigation Officer Vorth Prime was Korth. Weapons Officer Black 7 was Draxi. Sensor Technician Yith 12 was Valani. Communications Officer Plax 5 was Manthari. In fact, aside from himself and a handful of guards, nearly every position on the ship was filled by members of conquered species. They serve me because I am strong, Korth-Val declared, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. They serve you because they have to, Kane corrected. But what happens when someone offers them a choice? The Admiral's blood ran cold. What are you saying? I'm saying that freedom is a powerful motivator, Admiral. More powerful than fear. More powerful than slavery. And definitely more powerful than the ego of a predator who's never faced real prey. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the Devourer's Edge. Tactical displays showed chaos erupting across the Xerathi fleet. Ships were changing course without orders. Weapons systems were going offline. Communications between vessels were being jammed or rerouted. Report. Korth-Val roared that Yith 12's voice was barely a whisper. Sir, it appears that our conquered species crews they are not following orders anymore. What do you mean not following orders? I mean they're following different orders, sir. Orders from Earth. On the main screen, Admiral Kane leaned back in her chair. You see, Admiral, while you were congratulating yourself on how easy this invasion would be, we were busy offering your crews something you never could, which is hope. The word hung in the air like a weapon. Around the bridge, crew members who had served the Xerathi for decades were suddenly looking at their stations with new eyes. Some were reaching for communication devices. Others were quietly accessing systems they'd never dared touch before Korth-Val drew his plasma weapon. All crew, remember your loyalty oaths. Any act of treason will be met with immediate execution. But it was too late. Across the fleet, the same scene was playing out on hundreds of ships. Centuries of suppressed anger and desperate hope were erupting simultaneously. The conquered species that had been forced to maintain, operate, and fight in Xerathi vessels were remembering who they used to be, and they were choosing to be that again. Navigation Officer Vorth Prime stood slowly from his console. His people, the Korth, had been master strategists before the Xerathi enslaved them. Admiral, he said quietly, my family died in the bombardment of Korth Prime. My children were vaporized when your forces destroyed our capital city. Sit down, Vorth Prime. Korth-Val ordered, his weapon trained on the officer. For 50 years, I have served the Empire that murdered my world. 50 years of following orders, maintaining your ships, helping you destroy other innocent species. Vorth Prime's voice was growing stronger. But not today. The Korth officer's hands moved across his navigation console with practiced efficiency. Across the fleet, other navigation officers were doing the same thing. Ships began breaking formation, turning away from Earth, or simply stopping their advance. Stop this immediately, Korth-Val screamed, but his voice was lost in the chaos. On screen, Admiral Kane watched the proceedings with professional interest. Admiral, I should mention that this conversation is being broadcast to every ship in your fleet. I thought your crew should hear what we discussed. The implications hit Korth-Val like a meteorite. Every conquered species in his fleet now knew that Earth had been in contact with survivors from their homeworlds. They knew the humans had been preparing for this moment. Most importantly, they knew they weren't alone. Weapons Officer Black 7, whose Draxi people had been renowned for their military prowess, suddenly smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Admiral, My people developed most of the weapons systems on this ship. Would you like to know about the back doors we built into the targeting computers? Before Korth-Val could respond, weapons systems throughout the fleet began activating. But instead of targeting Earth, they were targeting each other. Specifically, they were targeting the ships with predominantly Xerathi crews. "This is mutiny," the Admiral bellowed. "No," said Admiral Kane from the screen. "This is justice." The Devourer's edge shuddered as its own weapons systems came online without authorization. Black 7 was calmly working at his station, his multiple eyes focused with deadly precision. Black 7, step away from that console immediately. The Draxi officer looked up. "Admiral, my species spent 200 years perfecting the art of warfare before you enslaved us. We built these weapons. We know every circuit, every weakness, every way to make them do things their designers never intended." Around the bridge, other officers were abandoning their posts or openly working against their Xerathi commanders. The carefully maintained hierarchy of fear and domination was collapsing in real time. Korth-Val's mind raced. This couldn't be happening. The Xerathi were predators. They were apex beings. They had conquered half the galaxy. "Humans," he snarled at the screen. "You think you have one? Even if our crews mutiny, you are still facing 1,200 of the most advanced warships ever built." Admiral Kane's expression grew serious. "Admiral, I want you to understand something. This isn't about our ships versus your ships. This isn't about our technology versus your technology. This isn't even about our species versus your species. Then what is it about? It's about the fact that you never learned the most important rule of warfare, which is," Kane's eyes hardened, "never fight an enemy who has nothing left to lose." The sensor displays around the bridge suddenly exploded with new contacts. Ships were emerging from the asteroid belt, rising from hidden bases on moons, and decloaking throughout the solar system. But these weren't human ships. They were Korth ships. Draxi ships. Volani ships. Manthari ships. Ships from dozens of species that the Xerathi had supposedly conquered and enslaved. "Impossible," Korth-Val whispered. "We destroyed their fleets. We scattered their survivors." "You scattered some of their survivors," Kane corrected. "The ones who made it to Earth have been busy. Turns out, when you give desperate people hope and resources, they can accomplish remarkable things." The tactical display showed the truth in devastating detail. The Xerathi fleet was surrounded by vessels from every species they had ever conquered. Ships that had been thought destroyed were revealing themselves. Crews that had been presumed dead were opening communications channels, and they were all working together. "Attention, Xerathi fleet," came a new voice over the communication system. "This is Admiral Korth-Val of the Free Korth Navy. We are here to reclaim our people and avenge our dead." Another voice joined in. "Xerathi vessels. This is Commander Ilex Prime of the Restored Draxi Defense Force. Your reign of terror ends today." More voices followed, each representing a species that had suffered under Xerathi rule. The communications channels filled with the accumulated anger and determination of civilizations that had been written off as extinct. Korth-Val staggered backward, his weapon forgotten. This isn't possible. You are all dead. We saw your homeworlds burn. You saw some of our homeworlds burn," Admiral Kane said quietly. "But life is stubborn, Admiral. It finds a way to survive. It finds a way to adapt. And sometimes, if it's very lucky, it finds allies who believe that freedom is worth fighting for." The Devourer's edge lurched as its own crew began taking control of critical systems. Around the fleet, similar scenes were playing out on hundreds of ships. The Xerathi Empire's greatest strength, its use of conquered species as slaves, had become its fatal weakness. "You planned this," Korth-Val said numbly. "All of it. The easy conquest, the primitive technology readings, the small defense force. It was all a trap." Kane nodded. "The moment your scouts enter our space, we knew you'd come. Your Empire's behavior is remarkably predictable. You see weak prey, you attack immediately. You rely on fear and overwhelming force to secure quick victories. You never consider that sometimes the prey might be smarter than the predator. Humans, the Admiral said, his voice filled with something approaching respect. What are you? Admiral Kane stood from her chair. Behind her, the command center bustled with activity as humans coordinated with dozens of allied species. We are the species that looked at the greatest predatory empire in the galaxy and asked a simple question. What question? What would happen if all their prey fought back at once? The answer, Korth-Val realized with growing horror, was the complete and utter destruction of everything the Xerathi had built. The rebellion spread through the Xerathi fleet like wildfire consuming dry grass. Within minutes, nearly 800 ships had fallen under the control of their own enslaved crews. The remaining 400 vessels, those with predominantly Xerathi personnel, found themselves surrounded by their former allies. Admiral Korth-Val watched his empire crumble in real time. The tactical display showed chaos beyond his worst nightmares. Xerathi captains were screaming for reinforcements that would never come. Battle groups were turning their weapons on each other. And through it all, Admiral Kane's calm voice continued coordinating the largest military uprising in galactic history. Status report. Korth-Val barked at Lieutenant Grix-4, one of the few remaining loyal officers on his bridge. Grix-4's bone spikes were trembling as he consulted his displays. Sir, we have lost contact with 7 battle groups. The Manthari crews on the heavy cruisers have locked out all Xerathi command codes. The Volani engineers are threatening to overload the reactor cores on any ship that doesn't surrender immediately. What about our pure Xerathi vessels? 392 ships still respond to our commands, Admiral, but they are scattered throughout the fleet and surrounded by hostile forces. Korth-Val's mandibles clicked rapidly. 300 ships was still a formidable force, more than enough to glass a primitive world like Earth. If he could regroup his loyal vessels and withdraw to a safe distance, he could still complete the mission through orbital bombardment. All Xerathi ships, this is Admiral Korth-Val. He broadcast on the emergency command frequency. Fall back to Rally Point 7. We will regroup and bombard the planet from maximum range. But as his remaining ships began to move, something extraordinary happened. The rebel vessels didn't pursue them. Instead, they formed defensive screens around Earth and its colonies, allowing the Xerathi forces to withdraw unmolested. Sir, Grix-4 said uncertainly, they are letting us go. Admiral Kane's voice cut through the tactical chatter. Admiral Korth-Val, I need to speak with you privately. Switch to secure Channel 9. Against his better judgment, Korth-Val accepted the private communication. Kane's face filled his personal display, her expression unreadable. Admiral, I'm going to make you an offer. What kind of offer? Korth-Val groaned. The kind that might save what's left of your empire. The Xerathi commander's eyes narrowed. Explain. Kane leaned forward. Right now, you have 400 ships and no support structure. No supply lines, no repair facilities, no conquered worlds sending you resources. Your empire is collapsing not just here, but everywhere. Word of this rebellion is already spreading through quantum communication networks. Every enslaved species in Xerathi space now knows that freedom is possible. Korth-Val's blood chilled. He hadn't considered the wider implications. If the rebellion spread beyond this system, you are bluffing. Am I? Kane gestured, and her display split to show dozens of other star systems. Each one showed the same scene. Rebel fleets engaging Xerathi forces, enslaved populations rising up, orbital installations falling to coordinated attacks. This started 6 months ago, Admiral. We have been planning this for years. The scope of the deception was staggering. While the Xerathi had focused on Earth as an easy target, the humans had been orchestrating the largest coordinated rebellion in galactic history. Every species the Xerathi had conquered, every survivor they'd scattered, every enslaved population they'd thought broken, had been secretly preparing for this moment. Impossible, Korth-Val whispered. The logistics alone, the logistics were the easy part, Kane said with a slight smile. Humans are good at logistics. We are also good at something else that your species never learned. What's that? Making friends. She was right, and Korth-Val knew it. The Xerathi had ruled through fear and domination, never considering that cooperation might be more powerful than conquest. They had seen other species as tools or obstacles, never as potential allies. "So what's your offer?" he asked. "Surrender. Right now. Order all remaining Xerathi forces to stand down, and I will guarantee the safety of every Xerathi who chooses to lay down their weapons." Korth-Val's laugh was bitter. "You expect me to believe that our victims will show us mercy. I expect you to believe that we are not like you," Cain replied firmly. "We don't exterminate entire species. We don't enslave populations. We don't rule through terror. We believe in something your empire forgot long ago, which is redemption." The word hit Korth-Val like a physical blow. In all his centuries of conquest, he had never encountered a species that offered mercy to defeated enemies. The strong consumed the weak. That was the natural order. That was how the universe worked, that wasn't it. "You are lying," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. That Cain's expression softened slightly. "Admiral, how many species has the Xerathi Empire completely destroyed?" Dozens. Maybe hundreds. "And how many of those species fought to the very last individual?" Korth-Val thought back through his military career. Most of them. They rarely surrendered until their home worlds were burning. Did you ever wonder why? The question caught him off guard. Because they were foolish. Because they couldn't accept superior strength. Or because they knew that surrender meant slavery or death anyway. Cain suggested. "Tell me, Admiral, in all your conquests, did you ever offer genuine mercy? Did you ever spare a defeated enemy? Did you ever allow a conquered species to maintain their dignity and freedom?" The silence stretched between them. The answer was no, and they both knew it. The Xerathi way has always been total domination or total destruction. Korth-Val said finally. "And look where it brought you." Around them, the battle continued to rage, but it was becoming increasingly one-sided. The rebel fleets had superior numbers, better coordination, and most importantly, they were fighting for their freedom rather than maintaining their chains. "Sir," Grix 4 interrupted urgently. "Long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements throughout Xerathi space. It looks like every conquered system is in full revolt." The tactical display updated to show the true scope of the disaster. Across 17 star systems, Xerathi installations were falling. Supply depots were being captured. Military academies were being overrun. The infrastructure of conquest that had taken centuries to build was crumbling in a matter of hours. "Your empire is finished, Admiral," Cain said quietly. "The question is whether it ends with more bloodshed or with a chance for your people to build something better." Korth-Val stared at the display, showing the collapse of everything he had devoted his life to creating. Generations of Xerathi commanders had believed they were building a legacy that would last forever. Instead, they had created a prison that would eventually trap even the jailers. "What would happen to my people?" he asked. "That depends on them," Cain replied. "Those who choose peace will be allowed to find new homes, new purposes. Those who continue to fight." She shrugged. "Well, you have seen what happens when all your former victims unite against you." The communications board lit up with incoming signals from across the fleet. Xerathi captains were reporting critical situations, requesting orders, demanding reinforcements that didn't exist. Some were already discussing surrender terms with their rebel crews. "Admiral," came another voice over the command channel. This one belonged to Captain Yorth 9 of the battlecruiser Stellar Fawn. "Sir, my Korth crew has sealed the command deck. They are offering to spare my life if I order all Xerathi forces to surrender." Similar reports flooded in from across the fleet. The rebellion wasn't just spreading, it was accelerating. Each surrender encouraged others. Each act of mercy from the rebels undermined decades of Xerathi propaganda about the necessity of strength through cruelty. "You have minutes, Admiral," Cain said. "Soon your captains will start making their own decisions about surrender." Some of the rebel species are less forgiving than others. The Draxi, in particular, have some very creative ideas about justice. As if summoned by her words, a new voice cut through the communications chaos. Xerathi scum, this is Battle Leader Korth-Val of the Draxi Vengeance Fleet. You have 30 seconds to surrender before we demonstrate why our people were feared throughout the galaxy. Korth-Val looked around his bridge. Grix 4 was pale with terror. The few remaining Xerathi officers were looking to him for guidance that he no longer possessed. His empire was gone. His fleet was defeated. His species faced extinction if he chose pride over pragmatism. If I surrender, he said to Kane, what guarantee do I have that your allies won't simply execute us all anyway? Kane's response was immediate and firm. You have my word, and you have the word of every species leader involved in this operation. We have all signed accords establishing rules for the treatment of surrendering Xerathi forces. Why would you do that? Because we are not like you, she repeated. We don't want to become the thing we fought against. The wisdom of those words struck Korth-Val with unexpected force. How many species had the Xerathi turned into monsters through their cruelty? How many peaceful civilizations have been forced to become warriors simply to survive Xerathi aggression? All Xerathi vessels, he said finally, his voice carrying across all command frequencies. This is Admiral Korth-Val. Effective immediately, all Xerathi forces are ordered to cease hostilities and prepare for surrender. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Across the fleet, weapons powered down. Shields dropped. Ships that had been preparing for desperate final battles instead began broadcasting surrender codes, but not all of them. Admiral, this is Captain Zex Prime of the destroyer Painbringer, came an angry voice. I will not surrender to inferior species. The Xerathi are the apex predators of this galaxy. Before Korth-Val could respond, the tactical display showed the Painbringer breaking from formation and accelerating toward Earth. Its weapons were charging for what appeared to be a suicide run against the human homeworld. All ships, intercept the Painbringer, Kane ordered calmly. What happened next would be remembered in military academies for centuries. Instead of human ships moving to intercept the rogue destroyer, it was surrounded by vessels from every species the Xerathi had conquered. Korth interceptors, Draxi battlecruisers, Valani energy ships, and dozens of others converged on the lone Xerathi vessel. They didn't destroy it. Instead, they disabled its engines and weapons with surgical precision, leaving the crew alive but helpless. Captain Zex Prime's furious voice echoed through the fleet. This is impossible. We are the strongest. We are the fiercest. We are the apex predators. Admiral Kane's response was broadcast to every ship in the system. Captain, let me explain something about predators. The most successful ones aren't the biggest or the strongest. They're the ones that adapt, the ones that learn, the ones that understand their environment and work with it instead of trying to dominate it. She paused, letting the words sink in. Your species never learned that lesson. You thought strength meant isolation. You thought power meant making everyone else weak. You thought survival meant ensuring no one else could survive. The rebel fleets had formed a perfect sphere around the remaining Xerathi vessels. It was a demonstration of coordination that spoke to months of planning and preparation. But here's what you never understood, Kane continued. In nature, the most successful species aren't the apex predators. They're the ones that form communities, the ones that help each other survive, the ones that make their environment stronger instead of weaker. Korth-Val found himself listening with something approaching fascination. No one had ever explained the Xerathi Empire's failures so clearly. That's why you lost, Kane said. Not because you weren't strong enough. Not because your technology wasn't advanced enough. You lost because you never learned that true strength comes from lifting others up, not pushing them down. The surrender process took several hours. Each Xerathi vessel was boarded by mixed crews from multiple species, ensuring that no single group could seek revenge. Xerathi officers were treated with respect and dignity, something many of them had never experienced before. As the Devourer's Edge powered down its final systems, Korth-Val found himself in the unusual position of being a prisoner who felt oddly relieved. The crushing weight of maintaining an empire through fear and violence was gone. For the first time in decades, he didn't have to worry about rebellions, supply lines, or which species would need to be crushed next. Admiral Kane appeared on his personal communicator one final time. "Admiral, you and your senior staff will be transported to a processing facility on Luna. You'll be interviewed, debriefed, and given options for your future." "What kind of options?" "That depends on you. Some of your people will choose to return to Xerathi space and help rebuild your civilization on peaceful terms. Others will choose to stay and contribute to the new galactic community we are building. A few might even choose to help us contact other predatory species and convince them that there's a better way." Korth-Val's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "And if we refuse all options, then you will be confined to a comfortable facility where you can live out your lives in peace. We won't execute you, we won't torture you, and we won't enslave you. But we also won't allow you to hurt anyone else." The concept was so foreign to Xerathi, thinking that Korth-Val struggled to process it. Mercy without weakness, justice without cruelty, strength through cooperation rather than domination. "Humans," he said finally, "you are not what we expected." Kane smiled. "Admiral, that's the point. You expected prey. You found partners. You expected weakness. You found strength you didn't recognize. You expected a quick conquest. You found a galaxy that was ready to fight back." As the transport ships arrived to collect the surrendering Xerathi forces, Korth-Val reflected on the lesson he had learned too late. The universe was not a hunting ground where the strong consumed the weak. It was a community where species could choose to lift each other up or drag each other down. The Xerathi had chosen domination and had ultimately dominated only themselves into extinction as a galactic power. But perhaps, with the help of their former enemies, they could learn to choose differently. The great predator empire was finished. In its place, something unprecedented in galactic history was beginning to emerge. A true community of species, united not by conquest, but by the revolutionary idea that cooperation was stronger than domination. And it had all started because the hairless apes of Earth had asked a simple question: what if the prey fought back together? The answer, as Admiral Korth-Val now understood, was the end of predators and the beginning of something much more powerful, the beginning of civilization.